Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced by North Idaho College located on Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guests.
We are most pleased to welcome you to our program both this week and next week as many of you pause to celebrate the holiday seasons. On today's program, we're going to have a guest who has certainly the ability and expertise to talk about different kinds of foods and decorations for the Christmas season for you who do a lot of entertaining or celebrating during that season. And he shall be back with us again next week, and we will talk about the New Year's and New Year's parties and programs and foods and celebrations. Therefore, we welcome to the program Bill Rutherford, who is the North Idaho College Food Services Manager, and he has a very interesting background in this subject and what he does, and I've been able to witness his fine foods and decorations in the past. So, Bill, thank you for being with us and sharing with our viewers things they may want to use either this year or if it's too late for them next year as we have these seasons every year. Welcome to the program.
Great, thank you, Tony.
And as always, I'm very pleased to have our two regular panelists, Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho, and next to her is Steve Schenck, who is the Vice President of College Relations and Development at North Idaho College, and Janelle shall commence the questioning.
Well, Bill, it's such fun to have you here. There are a million questions we could ask you because these are always the favorite times of the year for most of us. Do people often pick a theme and work through a theme for the holidays? Is that one way that people might approach the holiday season?
Sure, themes are really important. The holidays especially are kind of an intriguing time of year. People are in different spirits than they seem to be throughout the rest of the year. So Christmas can get monotonous without changing the way you do business. We like to decorate a lot, obviously, but decorations is just a small portion of it, I think. I think the large portion of it is the spirit of the thing. In our house, I know collecting Santa Claus is a big issue. We have Santa Clauses all over our house. That was our theme for last year. This year, we're kind of changing pace, I think. This year, we're doing everything in white. So we're going to have a white Christmas tree and white nativity and white everywhere. So our theme this year is white, which is kind of boring. But we like white. White's good. Next year, that'll change. Everything changes every year.
So color is one way to use it.
Color is a big issue.
And so you could use blues, or you could use the traditional red and green, and you can do that in table settings as well. Is that right?
Absolutely. A few years ago, we decided to bring the outside in, so we changed our entire house into kind of a lodge and decorated as if we really wanted to go up to a cabin for the Christmas holidays and couldn't do it because, well, we all work. Working is very important. So we changed our house into the cabin, and we decorated the table in pine boughs and put a birch tree in the middle of our house. And our Christmas tree, we've been toying with the idea of using a dead birch branch for a Christmas tree, but my wife hasn't really caught onto that one yet. I think we're still traditionally a Christmas tree, but that's changing. Every year we change our styles and the things we prepare also. Baking and treats and chocolates and all that type of thing are a big Norman Rockwell household thing that we do every year. There's three of us, my wife, my daughter, and myself, and we spend a lot of time making a lot of chocolate. We're the people that people hate to see come, towards the last couple of days before Christmas, because we have all the stuff, the chocolate-covered cherries and peanuts that are covered with chocolate and raisins. We cover everything with chocolate. I think our past few years, maybe the theme has been chocolate. We've also started pressing cookies and hanging those on the trees, different molasses and peppermint flavored cookies, which change the flavor of the house.
So it adds a nice aroma.
The aroma is
nice
incredible.
smell.
It's interesting when you walk in the house after you've done it, you don't notice it when you're doing it, but once you walk back in the house, the peppermint fragrances are incredible. And it just smells like Christmas. It smells like it did when you were a kid, getting that first piece of candy out of a box.
Steve Schenck.
Bill, and I like Janelle's question, and you set aside the religious significance of Christmas in Christian families. To me, it gets down to family, friends, and food.
Absolutely.
So let's really zero in for a minute on that food theme. And Tony's already warned me that since Thanksgiving is past, I can't talk about Thanksgiving. But Thanksgiving for me is, that's pretty traditional. Turkey, I'm not talking about it. I'm just using it as a frame of reference, Tony. Yeah. What would you describe as the typical, or do you think there is a typical Christmas dinner like there's a typical Thanksgiving dinner?
I've been recently doing lots of research on the typical Christmas meal because I have a problem that I think most people don't have, and that is my wife and daughter are both vegetarian, and I am not. I enjoy having the Christmas goose or the ham or the prime rib. We're experimenting this year. Typically, I love prime rib at Christmas time. Anything that's extremely hearty, something that has lots of broth, lots of texture and flavor to it is substantial for Christmas. Anything, as you know, traditionally we used to eat small portions of food. Christmas and get-togethers are a time when we don't. We gouge. It's a time to get lots and lots of food from all sorts of different families. So traditionally it's a potluck affair. Somebody brings the pie, somebody brings the main course, and everything comes together. I think now it's getting back again to kind of a themed meal where it's the traditional New England feast. Lots more people are having pasta and shellfish for their traditional Christmas feast. Lobster, of course, has always been popular. Lobster, of course, has always been expensive. But if you're going to splurge, do it at Christmas time. That makes sense. This year, we're going to try, I don't know how it's going to work, but we're going to try goose. We're going to do a goose, and hopefully it will turn out good, because I'll have to eat all of it. We're also doing a vegetable loaf, which is a tofu almond grain loaf that you cook not unlike a turkey or a goose, and then you top it with a carrot sauce. So it's, again, a hearty meal, and I think hearty food is the most important.
Wonderful, thank you.
As you talk to people around the country that come together around families for this season, there's also some things that are very traditional, a particular family. Some people have a recipe for a special cake. I know of one family, they bake the cakes a year ahead of time and store them. There are certain kinds of fruit cakes, and others have certain wines and so forth. What would you suggest in that area, if, or in your case, do you notice that is something that some of your friends do?
Absolutely. My assistant gives me, last year, I hope this tradition keeps on going, but last year she made her own Kahlua, and she makes it in January and gives it as Christmas gifts, and puts it in just real decorative bottles. It's really a gift. The alcohol is not the gift. It's the whole presentation of what she's done and how long the process has taken her to make that come to life. I also think that, well, I know my mother-in-law every year makes us that fruit cake, which she starts in about March, and it sits in the brandy throughout the season, throughout the June, July, and August, gets to us, hopefully, any day now. And it's pretty ripe by the time you get it, but it's so flavorful. I know there's a lot of jokes about that, about fruit cakes, but hers is pretty tremendous.
I should tell our audience that we've taped this somewhat earlier than it's airing, so I'm sure by the time it airs, your cake has arrived, or it could be close to being too late.
We can hope.
Put that not in. Since this is your field and your foods are something that you really, really enjoy, do you have any recipes? We've talked about some things that you do in your family, but is there a particular dish or something that you would like to go through a recipe? One thing I like for our viewers to get from the program is something they can use.
Absolutely.
In addition to the decoration and all that. So would you like to share a recipe that you think would be something that they would be interested in using either this year or in the future?
Our family, again, is mostly vegetarian, but being vegetarian, you have to look at other options. We're big bread eaters, and there's a bread recipe that's just probably the most simple thing in the world to make, and it tastes better than any homemade bread I think ever found.
And we don't have this on the screen or something, you just have to share, is that right?
It's the most simple recipe ever invented.
I'm just delaying a little bit to allow our viewers to go get a pencil.
Absolutely.
And a pad, and even though it's simple to you because you're used to it, they, I bet, want to write it down. I'm always thinking of the viewers. You know,
Perfect.
They're my friends.
There are
so.
only two numbers anyone has to remember. That's
Okay.
3 and 1/4. It's simple. It's three cups of self-rising flour,
Okay.
1 bottle of beer, and
And that can be any kind of beer?
any kind of beer. I use the darkest beer I can possibly find, but 12 ounces. It can't be more than 12 ounces. So 1 bottle of 12-ounce beer, dark as possible. If you don't like your bread really dark, then use a light ale or a Pilsner. And then a 1/4 cup of sugar and a 1/4 cup of butter. It's that simple. And you simply mix the flour, flour in a bowl, add the beer, mix it together, and then add in the sugar, mix it one more time, and you have the dough. You grease a pan, a small bread loaf pan, and put the dough in the pan. Melt the butter. It's a 1/4 cup of butter. You melt that, and then pour that over the top. So you can kind of see what's happening here. You're going to have a real heavy leavened dough. The beer helps leaven it, so it's no yeast needed. And you bake it at a 350-degree oven. This is probably an important thing to remember, for 50 minutes. It should be real dark and golden, just beyond golden brown at 50 minutes. It should be pulling away from the sides of the loaf pan. When you get to that stage, then pull it out, let it sit on a wire rack, and serve it warm is the best way. Let the butter, again, cold butter melt over the top. And it's incredible, simply incredible. From that recipe, you could add anything you like. You'd add raisins if you're looking for that after Christmas bread, so you could get up in the morning and have raisin bread. You can add caraway seeds or rye to it. It's a simple recipe, but it's extremely great for the holidays, because nothing smells better than bread baking in your house.
I know our viewers are getting that down, but I have to tell on the panel, they weren't on the screen. We have 2 people here already with the recipe, and so I'm sure when they bake this bread, they'll be able to share some with us to see how it turned out.
Absolutely.
Right. Janelle?
During the Christmas season, we often tend to overeat. I think Steve has a saying here, if you will share it with us.
Stuff yourself till you drop.
And we do have that tendency. What do you suggest when we're out or we're going to the numerous Christmas parties and to the other things that are going on? What do you suggest to keep that from happening quite so much?
Moderation, obviously, is very important,
Yes.
but also the types of food that you're eating is important. Carbohydrates, if you're not going to exercise or not going to work out, are going to fill you up, and they're going to stay with you a long time. Obviously, the best option is once you eat, to get the whole family together and go for a walk. Work it off, especially if you have a lot of carbohydrates, which we do at Christmas time. We have a lot of them. Again, moderation is very important, but I know in our family we drink a lot of water. If you get full with the water, nothing else has room to get in. But you don't want to do that during the holidays. You want to fill up on the really good stuff. So I think treat yourself at Christmas time.
And what suggestions do you have for the cook who wants to have her guests feel, when they leave, like they're very comfortable instead of stuffed?
Absolutely.
What suggestions do you have as far as the overall menu is concerned so that things are balanced out?
Again, it depends on tradition. I know in Italian families, the traditional Christmas Eve meal is a pasta meal, which kind of prepares you for the next day. Pasta is an incredible food because it not only fills you up, again, has lots of carbohydrates, but you marry it with some of the other salads and such, Caesar salad, and it allows you to eat in moderation. It doesn't force you to do the overeating. Another idea is the low-fat issue. I think it's difficult to cook high-fat now. Most of the turkeys, most of the geese, the hams that we get are 98, 99% fat-free. Are really difficult to serve. We don't see a lot of the gelatin that we used to see in geese and ham and such. So shop wisely, I think. Also, traditionally we use a lot of dressings in our cooking. A new trend in food service is to go away from the dressings and go more towards salsas and chutneys, which are really low-cal, and they have vinegars and wines in them, and which aid in digestion. much better for you. And besides that, I think a chutney, a mango chutney or raspberry chutney on top of a piece of goose is so much better than drowning it with gravy. It tastes a lot better. And you don't leave the table feeling like you've eaten grease. You leave the table feeling like you've just eaten a real light, refreshing meal.
Steve Sheen.
Bill, let me get back for a minute to that notion of the Christmas goose as a traditional meal. It's something we certainly haven't tried in our family. Is it different preparing a goose than it is preparing a turkey?
It's a little different because you have a lot of different cuts on the goose than you do the turkey. You have the breast, thighs, and the legs, and those are the pieces that you use. You can prepare it basically the same way. The best way, I think, to prepare a goose is to make a dry rub of anything that you like. Dry rubs are so neat because you could do them with any kind of food that you like. I like mine spicy, so I use a lot of black pepper, red pepper, cayenne pepper, salt and black pepper, minimal amount of salt, of course, and then sage, rosemary, the typical Italian seasonings.
And these are things you just rub on the goose itself or the turkey?
I do them two ways. First, at the opening of the goose, put your hand underneath the skin and you kind of work your hand inside between the skin and the body of the flesh of the goose. And then you put the rub inside there, and that infuses it into the meat. If you do it only on the outside of the goose, what you're doing is you're creating a very tasty skin, but not an incredibly tasty goose. So kind of olive oil first underneath the skin, and then put that dry rub underneath there, and it's gonna totally change the flavor. Put the dry rub heavily on the outside and light on the inside, because the flavor does get a lot stronger once it touches the meat. Okay. And then, of course, if you want a goose that is not dry, most of us are afraid of geese goose because they're traditionally dry if they're not cooked properly. There's two tricks. You can cook it upside down, so all the juice goes into the breast. Or watching the temperatures is the most important thing. You want it to get to 175 degrees, and you test that with the instant read thermometer into the thigh, and you don't let that touch the bone. If it touches the bone, then the temperature, the bone's warmer than the meat is, so the temperature's going to rise. It's very essential, obviously, to get it to exactly it needs to be 180. You bring it to 175, and then it finishes cooking outside the oven. You let it finish cooking. Let it sit before you cut it, which is very important. Most people take it out of the oven, put it on the table, and it's time to slice. And what that does is, as soon as you slice it, there goes all the juice. You want that juice to get back inside of the goose. So you let it sit 10 minutes, and then serve it. Then it's time to slice it, and it turns out really good.
You got time for me to? Sure. Bill, I think a lot of people who are uncomfortable with these big meals, the easiest part is to pick the entree: goose, turkey, right, ham, roast beef, or prime rib. Can you suggest some things? And tastes do go together or not. Could you take us through a few of those very popular entrees and suggest some things that people could use to fill out a dinner that will complement the entree?
Sure. Most of the time with geese or a goose, people stuff it, and again, high bread factor, high carbohydrates, all the other stuff. I think rice is a much better filling. Rice you can basically prepare in a frying pan first. You season it in the pan, saute it with the onions and any kind of seasoning that you like. I always put dry cranberries in, and then while it cooks, the cranberries pump up and become real sweet berries once it's done. And then you cook the rice basically dry inside of the bird, and with some water in there to ensure that it has enough moisture to cook. Stuff it real lightly, because of course what happens when rice cooks, it swells. Mm-hmm. A lot of people make the mistake of stuffing it inside the goose, and what that does is it creates this mass of rice, which is real disgusting. You don't want to do that. So just let it cook in there, and once, if you do that and pack it in lightly enough, you're going to have a great rice to take out of the bird. Again, the rice has to at least get 160 degrees. If it doesn't reach that temperature, then it's probably not safe. So take it out, finish it off in a pan. And again, chutneys are so important, I think. Salsas are important. Salsas and chutneys are not too unlike each other. Salsas are generally, obviously, from South America, Mexico, Spain. Chutneys are from India. just a different theory in the way to cook things.
Just a couple of side dishes that you would recommend with that?
You get bored with potatoes, you get bored with mashed potatoes. We like to do the yams, but we blend them first with brown sugar, and then when that's done, we toast almonds and mix the toasted almonds with it, so you have the crunchiness plus the sweetness, and it's almost a pure nutrient food. Sweet potatoes are. So that's a great thing to cook with anything. Avoid the marshmallow topping, as most people do, and then you'll have a very healthy meal.
Thank you.
I don't know if I'm going to make through this program because I'm so hungry after hearing all of this with such an expert here. This season, too, there's a lot of entertaining, and a lot of wonderful families are generous with their time, and they host guests. Could you give us some suggestions about some things to do when you have over several guests for a party? And of course, there's different kind of parties where you might serve certain just light foods, or you may have a sit-down dinner and so forth. I'm just going to leave that open for you to make some suggestions about how to make your guests feel special at that season.
It seems, we all go to a lot of parties, it seems, around the Christmas holidays. It seems like a lot of those parties are maybe a little too stiff. It's nice to put people at ease when they come through your door. I know my best friend, Martha Stewart, would suggest offering a gift to each person as they come through the door, something that's going to put them at ease. And I think that's a solid suggestion. I think things to make people realize that you're coming into our home, not to another social event, I think is really important. I know I play guitar, so when people come to our house, we always have the Christmas sing-along, and that if somebody starts singing, they're at ease. And alcohol doesn't need to be part of the theme. You could definitely serve ciders and chocolates and other type of beverages, especially if it's work-related, people you aren't comfortable drinking around. There's lots of different items to serve, sparkling punches, and put people at ease just by doing things that people would feel comfortable doing it in their own household, I think. Music seems to be a calming effect. Sometimes it's tough to get everybody involved in sing-along, especially when people don't sing that well, but it does create a lot of fun, that's for sure.
And also, sometimes you have parties where some of the guests don't know one another, and so is the use of music a way of also making them feel more comfortable?
I think so. I think most people have the traditional song stuck in their head from childhood, be they Jewish or Christian or whatever their background may be, so the songs are the same. I think most people understand what the songs are and they're able to sing along, especially the simple ones, the jingle bells and such. Also, a fun thing that we do is we put on those hokey little Christmas specials that they played when we were kids, and talk about loosening people up. I mean, I remember that. I haven't seen this in 30 years. And it really makes people excited and people start talking to each other about what they remember from their Christmas. It really creates that atmosphere of people talking about the traditions. And I think that's the important part of Christmas, are those traditions that are carried on. It seems we all have the same ones, and it's pretty easy to share.
I really liked your statement, too, of when you have lots of friends who are from very diverse backgrounds, and some may be Christian, some Jewish, or whatever other background it might be, and to be able to put in a setting where everyone can celebrate, whether it be Hanukkah or Christmas, where it might be, so you can make the season to fit the needs of your guests.
That's the key. It's very important. We're all diverse. Everybody's different, and we all come from very, very diverse backgrounds. We're a mobile society. Some of us came from California, others from New York, others from India. We need to understand and respect those different cultures. They're kind of exciting. It's kind of interesting what other people bring to your house during those celebrations. We embrace that because it's all about the tradition, and it's interesting hearing other people's traditions of their childhood. It's kind of fun.
Janelle Burke.
Well, before I go on with my question, I really wanted to just comment that it seems like the spiritual side of us so often comes out during the holidays, and we're very interested in, and I'm not talking about just religion, but I'm talking about our religious beliefs, or maybe how we feel about giving someone something. We re-examine the whole year that's gone before us. And all of those things go into the Christmas season and the tradition of reading or whatever it might be that is a part of our family. But my question has to do with the table that you set and some of your tips for making a pretty table during this Christmas season.
Absolutely. Setting the right table is obviously important. People get real confused on how to set a table, and it seems that shouldn't be a stumbling block. You shouldn't have to go to Emily Post and go reread all the papers and all the books to make sure that your guests will be comfortable. Use common knowledge. There's a great skill to use that I show all my employees. You put your fingers like this, and this means bread goes over here and beverages go on this side. So it's easy for the students. They always remember that because it's like looking through a looking glass or something. So get the table set correctly first. Make the guests know where their bread plate is and where their silver is and where their beverages are supposed to be. Nothing more embarrassing than two people grabbing for the same wine glass because they don't know. And then the other stuff. What we like to do is layer a table. We put, obviously like we are, you need to be able to see the guests across from you. But we like to layer by building underneath the tablecloth, putting blocks and such. So some of the meals or some of the plates are elevated so you can really show off the food. And then just everything, especially a Christmas table, needs to be decorated. Pine boughs, tons of candles. Candles make the event. Candles are so simple and so inexpensive. If you put nothing else on your table, put candles, and that'll just create the event, especially on Christmas. Especially fragrant candles.
And so that all helps. And then, of course, napkins can have a great...
Napkins are very important.
The way you do them or how you put them on the table.
We go through napkin folding contests. Every place we go, somebody borrows a napkin, brings it back to us and say, how did they do this? How did this one get folded like that in swans or in fans? Or we try to be decorative about our candles, but also not to confuse the guests, because sometimes guests will get confused on, I don't want to take this apart. Do I set this swan in my lap and let it, or can I actually use it? I don't know.
On that note, we have to bring the program to conclusion. It's been such an interesting program, and I know our viewers have gotten ideas that they'll use, and it'll be enjoyable, and that was the purpose of having the program. And Bill Ralford, as the food services manager at North Idaho College, you certainly have contributed in a significant way to our viewers and the different ways they may want to use your suggestions to celebrate a season. On behalf of our panel and our staff, we thank you very much for being with us, and I want to take this opportunity to invite you back next week, and we're going to move to New Year's celebrations.
Great.
And again, those who are watching this week can be prepared to get some ideas for that next week. Again, Bill, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed the guests as much as we have in our program, and that you'll be with us again next week when we talk about New Year's with our guests and celebrations for that holiday. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running entirely college-produced program on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.